I didn't think of it as spending at the time. I thought of it as keeping things smooth. That was the word I used in my head, smooth. Like I was sanding down the sharp edges of everyday life with money so nothing ever caught. Covering the extra few dollars so the bill split didn't get weird. Paying for the faster option so no one had to wait. Choosing the easier path so nobody felt uncomfortable, including me. It felt grown up, responsible, almost generous. I told myself this was what stability looked like. A life where nothing felt tense, nothing felt awkward, and nothing slowed down the moment. What I didn't notice was how often I was reaching for my card, not because I wanted something, but because I wanted the situation to stay pleasant. And at the time, that didn't feel like a problem. It felt like maturity. Only later did it start to feel like weight. I remember how often I was the one who said, let's just order in. Not because I was hungry, because cooking felt like effort. And effort sometimes leads to silence or tension or someone checking their phone too much. Ordering food kept the night easy. An extra $20 here. Another delivery fee there. A tip rounded up because it felt cleaner that way. I told myself it was nothing. $25 doesn't change a life. But I did it 3 times a week. Sometimes 4. That's about $300 a month. Roughly $3,600 a year. I didn't do that math back then. I didn't want to. Because at the time, it didn't feel like spending money. It felt like buying a version of the night where nobody complained, nobody drifted off, and nobody made it weird. And I didn't notice how quietly that comfort was teaching my bank account to hold its breath. If you want me to keep going, just say continue. There were a lot of moments where I let the math blur because I didn't want to be the difficult one. Splitting checks evenly when I ordered less. Rounding up because doing exact math felt petty. Covering someone's share because it was easier than waiting. Each time was small. $5, $10, maybe $15. And every time I told myself the same thing. It's not worth making this a thing. I didn't feel generous. I felt efficient. But when you do that a few times a week, every week, for years, it starts to become a pattern you don't remember agreeing to. What bothered me later wasn't the money. It was how automatic it became. I stopped noticing when I was paying for the room to stay comfortable. I just did it. And the ease of it, that's what made it invisible. I also upgraded things I didn't really need, mostly to avoid feeling out of step. A slightly nicer apartment because everyone else seemed to be moving up. Faster internet because lag felt embarrassing. A gym I barely used because saying I went there sounded better than admitting I didn't. Each upgrade felt logical on its own. None of them felt like a mistake. The rent was only a few hundred more. The internet was just another $20 a month. The gym was basically the price of a couple coffees. That's how I framed it. But those decisions weren't about quality of life as much as quality of alignment. I didn't want to feel behind. Or cheap, or like the guy who always had an excuse. I didn't notice how much stability I traded for that feeling until much later. Subscriptions were another quiet one. Streaming services I barely watched. Apps I told myself I'd use eventually. Cloud storage because deleting things felt like admitting something was over. $10 here, $15 there. $20 for something I signed up for late at night and forgot about by morning. Individually, none of it mattered. But when I finally added them up, it was over $100 a month, over $1,200 a year. I remember staring at the list longer than I needed to. Not shocked, just uncomfortable, because canceling them felt less like saving money and more like acknowledging drift. And I wasn't ready to admit how much of my spending was about holding on to old versions of myself. Travel was always the easiest, yes. Weekend trips, weddings, bachelor parties that somehow lasted 4 days. Flights, Airbnbs, rental cars, all split evenly. All booked quickly, all framed as memories. I told myself I'd regret missing them more than I'd regret the money. And maybe that was true in the moment. But I noticed how often the credit card balance lingered afterward. How long it took to feel caught up again. $1,000 here, $800 there. Nothing catastrophic. Just enough to keep the floor feeling a little less solid. That was the first time I started sensing the trade-off. Not sharply. Just as a dull pressure that didn't go away. There were also all the movement costs I never questioned. Extra gas because I was always the one driving. Parking fees because showing up late felt worse than paying. Tolls because the faster route kept things flowing. It didn't feel like spending. It felt like logistics. But month after month, those logistics showed up on my statements, like a quiet tax on availability. I didn't realize how much I paid just to be easy to reach. Easy to meet. Easy to rely on. Being the flexible one had a price. I just never asked what it was until it was already paid. Sometimes I paid money just to avoid conversations. Late fees instead of calling customer service. Convenience charges instead of waiting on hold. Expedited shipping because patience felt heavier than the cost. I told myself I was buying time. But looking back, I think I was buying silence. Silence from friction. Silence from decisions. Silence from the part of me that was starting to notice the pattern. Those fees added up too. Not in a dramatic way. In a way that made my margins thinner without me realizing why. Work lunches were another one. Going out because everyone else was. Coffee runs because saying no felt like opting out. Ordering something I didn't really want, so I wouldn't be the odd one. $15 a day doesn't feel like much, but $15 5 days a week is about $300 a month. Over $3,000 a year? That was a number I didn't expect to hear myself say out loud. It wasn't about the food, it was about staying in rhythm. And that rhythm was quietly expensive. This was the part I didn't want to look at first. When I finally sat down and did the math, not aggressively, just honestly, the numbers landed harder than I expected. Delivery, about $3,600 a year. Subscriptions, another $1,200. Work lunches and coffee, $3,000 plus. Random convenience fees and upgrades, easily a couple thousand more. I wasn't living lavishly, I wasn't reckless, but I was spending between $10,000 and $12,000 a year just keeping things easy. That number didn't feel fake. It felt earned, and that's what made it uncomfortable. Nothing collapsed because of that spending. That's the tricky part. My finances didn't explode, I didn't hit rock bottom. I just felt thinner, less buffer, more tension around bills, a constant low-level awareness that one surprise expense would sting more than it should. Stability didn't disappear, it faded. And fading is harder to notice than falling. I used to defend those choices, pretty confidently. I told myself I was being flexible, that I valued experiences, that money was meant to make life easier, and I still believe some of that. But what I didn't see was how often I was paying to avoid feeling out of place. Kindness felt clean, generosity felt safe, but neither of them sent an invoice right away. They waited. There's an emotional cost to always keeping things light. Money became the tool I used to manage mood, not happiness, smoothness. If things felt tense, I spent. If things felt awkward, I spent. If things might slow down, I spent. It worked, until it didn't, because eventually I started feeling anxious in a life that was technically comfortable. That mismatch bothered me more than any overdraft fee ever did. The discomfort wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. I'd open my banking app and feel a small tightening in my chest. Not panic, recognition. I was doing everything right on paper, working, paying bills, being responsible, and yet the numbers weren't moving the way I expected. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about one bad decision. It was about hundreds of small, easy ones. I noticed my savings plateaued. Not shrinking, not growing, just stuck. My lifestyle felt calm and pleasant, but my financial life felt tense underneath. That contrast was unsettling, because nothing in my day-to-day felt wrong enough to change. And that's what made it hard. I started thinking about friction differently, how stability actually needs a little resistance, a little discomfort, and how often I'd paid to remove that without realizing what I was giving up. That thought didn't feel empowering. It felt awkward, like noticing something about yourself you can't unsee. There were moments I almost looked closer, almost questioned a charge, almost canceled something, but being tired made it easier to just let it slide. Not because I didn't care, because caring required energy I didn't always have. And money filled the gap. The hardest part was admitting I was part of it. There wasn't a villain. There wasn't a trap someone else said. Just patterns I participated in because they felt normal. Recognizing that didn't feel freeing. It felt heavy, but honest. Now, when I think about social ease, I don't see it as free anymore. I see it as something with a price tag I ignored. Not because I was careless, because I was comfortable. And comfort is persuasive. Sometimes I picture an ordinary night, a delivery bag on the counter, my phone lighting up with another plan, another easy yes waiting to happen. Nothing dramatic, just a small decision that keeps things smooth. And I catch myself pausing there longer than I used to, not deciding anything, just noticing.